So, episode 3 of The Strain just aired, and it wasn't too bad. My enthusiasm for the show hasn't died down any. I'm still interested to see where it goes. So let's get on to what was good with this episode. We got to see some more evolution of the disease, and we got to see a little bit more character development from Vet and F. The bad parts of this episode. It was slow, and not the normal slow burn. It seemed like the last episode was kind of its meandering point, where it was like establishing more of the disease, or taking time to introduce some new characters. But this really seemed to be the slow point. And the reason why it pisses me off a little bit more in this episode as opposed to last week's was because this stuff sort of happened in the book, but it didn't happen in this way. It was more spread out. It was more like they encountered the vampires. The captain turns. They deal with him, and Abraham there takes them to kill some vampires, and they learn more about it. And then it gets to Gabe, the heavy metal guy, turning into a vampire, and everyone else turning into a vampire. But this one, it's really taking its time. This episode mostly focused on the transformation of the people that got off the plane. The one guy, I can't remember what his name is, I'm really bad with names. He has like a wife and kids or whatever, focused on his transformation mostly, like how he just looks really sickly, his head is aching, his teeth are hurting, he's pale, he has migraines, and he's hearing a voice in his head. The general consensus is that it's the master's voice telling him what to do. That scene basically ends, that set of scenes basically ends with his wife catching him drinking blood out of a steak that they have in the fridge. Gabe's transformation ends with his dick falling off, because the vampires aren't of any gender specifically, so that's how his transformation ends, and he's really pale, his nose is starting to turn, his ears are starting to become like more sharp, his chin's changing, he has like the stinger in him now. The most interesting part, I'd say, was the captain. He went, like, his transformation, because he was in the hospital the entire time, and when they're taking him in for surgery to get like a look at how his body's changing, he escapes, he attacks Jim and Nora and F, and that's where the episode ends. This episode was very, very slow and very light on action. We saw the start of the episode was like the guy who's working with the Stoneheart group, that main vampire. In the book, he was like a Nazi commandant. He was working with the Master back in with the Nazis. His character, you basically see him put on like his human makeup. He like puts on a nose, powders up his face so he looks not dead, puts on like skin around his neck to cover up the stinger, all that. Other than that, I really don't know. This episode was kind of the worst one in the bunch, because if you haven't read the books, then you're really not going to care for this episode. You're going to think it's really meandering and taking its time. There's a difference between a slow burn and just filler episodes. When even I've read the books, and I know they don't need filler episodes right now. They can get through like the first book in one season if they really wanted to, and I think they're going to maybe stretch out for 2 seasons per book. From what I've heard, what Guillermo del Toro wants is he wants 2 seasons per book or something. He wants like 5 seasons in total. But because I think The Fall is the shortest book out of them. But one part specifically in this episode that really made me mad was when Vet made an appearance. his main scene in the episode was him going to a high-rise owned by this rich guy whose daughter got bit by a rat. He takes the rat, captures it. As he's leaving the apartment, he sees these rats, like, scurrying down the street. And this is what bugs me. They were CGI. I understand that because of animal cruelty laws, you can't, like, butcher animals like they used to in, like, those old movies, like, where they threw horses over cliffs and shit like that, but all these rats were doing was just walking on the street, and they were really bad CGI. Try to clean up your CGI and toss in, like, 1 or 2 real rats in there, or something like that. That just really irritated me. The Ephraim, his good parts in this episode, where you got to see some more between him and his son and his ex-wife or whatever, because he lost his son in the divorce hearings. That was a cool little scene. Another thing about this episode that really irritates me is that Abraham still was only in it for like 2 or 3 minutes total. He was talking to Nora, and he basically was like, "Oh, you're not going to destroy the bodies, well then you were useless to me." Like, in the book, he makes himself more clear. He shows the bodies he shows the heart that he has in his storage area to Nora and F, to show, like, this is what it is. It can reanimate dead tissue. These things are very dangerous. Yes, he does get arrested and stuff like that in the book, but he's more clear on his point, like his goals. Whereas this, he's kind of like the crazy old man who's just trying to take this into his own hands and doesn't want anyone else's help. The only character that I can think of that was lacking in this episode was Gus. We didn't see him at all in this episode, which really annoyed me a little bit. I understand they can't have all characters in all episodes until later because they're trying to explain different storylines and whatnot, but I find this episode focused on the wrong characters. Like, focus on the captain changing and then show more of Abraham's story and Gus's story. But from what I remember, Gus's story doesn't come back into the book until vampires attack his family, or he throws, like, one out in front of a car or something like that. So, but other than that, this was a decent episode. It wasn't the best episode. I'm looking forward to see what happens next week, because basically shit has become real for Nora and F. They've seen what these things are and are now aware of it. Also, I'm really anxious for when Jim Kent dies, because he dies in the book and his character is kind of dickish in this one too. Like, they give his character a little bit more motivation to betray everyone because his wife has cancer and whatnot, but if he knew what he was doing, he'd basically say it's not worth it, because at the end of the books, like, I can't remember if it's the world that's almost taken over or if it's just New York, but I'm pretty sure it's New York. I know New York is definitely taken over entirely by these vampires, but I can't remember if it's spread to, like, the world or not, because I remember in the second book you do find out that there's, like, other head vampires besides the Master, and the Master's just the one that wants to destroy the status quo and make vampires in their natural spot, which is top of the food chain. But like I said, I'm anxious to see where the next episode goes, and hopefully it improves on the flaws and falters that were in this one. This Thursday I'll be going to see a midnight screening of Guardians of the Galaxy, so see you guys then. If you like this video, please like, comment, or subscribe. Thank you very much.